Every night, millions of people wake up around 3 in the morning and immediately assume something is wrong with them. Doctors call it insomnia. Sleep apps tell you to fix it. Your phone certainly doesn't help. But for thousands of years, waking in the middle of the night wasn't considered a sleep problem. It was considered normal. In fact, historians eventually stumbled onto something so strange, it changed what scientists thought they knew about human sleep itself. Because your ancestors didn't sleep for 8 hours. They slept twice. And the reason we forgot that isn't buried in ancient myth. It's sitting in the wall of your bedroom, plugged into an outlet. Picture a household in the 16th century, long after sunset, with no candlelight to spare and no clock demanding punctuality. The fire has burned to embers. Somewhere around midnight, in this near-total blackness, people simply woke up, not startled, not anxious, but calmly, as though surfacing from one room into another. Court depositions, physicians' manuals, and personal diaries from this era casually reference 2 distinct sleeps in a single night, separated by an hour or more of quiet wakefulness. But here's the part that historians couldn't explain for decades. Why would an entire species build a 2-part sleep cycle and then simply abandon it without a trace? The man who first noticed how thoroughly this had vanished from history wasn't a sleep scientist. He was a historian. Roger Ekirch at Virginia Tech spent years combing through pre-industrial records, legal testimonies, letters, literature, and kept finding the same 2 words surfacing across centuries and countries. First sleep, second sleep, not as a curiosity worth explaining, as a plain fact of life as unremarkable as breakfast, which raised an unsettling question. If this was normal for thousands of years, why does virtually no one alive today sleep this way? Then scientists accidentally recreated it. In the 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Wehr ran an experiment that would quietly upend everything researchers assumed about human sleep. He placed volunteers into 14 hours of darkness a night, for weeks, with no artificial light to interrupt it, closer to a pre-industrial winter than a modern bedroom. Within about a month, something remarkable happened. Nobody slept in one long block anymore. Every single volunteer split into 2 distinct phases, with a stretch of calm, alert wakefulness in between. A lab in Maryland had just reproduced, in a matter of weeks, a rhythm that court records had described for centuries. And the strangest part wasn't that people were waking up. It was what they did with the time. Historical sources describe people praying, interpreting dreams while they were still fresh, talking quietly with a spouse, or simply lying in the dark in a state some writers described as unusually peaceful, closer to meditation than insomnia. Nobody panicked. Nobody reached for anything. The waking itself was never the problem. What turned it into one was something that hadn't been invented yet. So what actually killed a sleep pattern our bodies could still produce on command in a laboratory? Not medicine, not evolution, light. As gas lighting spread through European cities in the early 1800s, and electric light finished the job by the century's end, humanity's darkness began shrinking, hour by hour. Bedtimes crept later. The long, unhurried night that once made room for 2 sleeps compressed into one dense block, not because our biology changed, but because the dark it depended on had disappeared. Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. This didn't take generations to erase. By the early 20th century, references to first sleep had all but vanished from literature and everyday speech. A pattern documented in court testimonies across 4 centuries disappeared from human memory in the span of a single lifetime. We didn't evolve out of it. We simply switched off the conditions that revealed it and forgot it had ever existed. Now, it would be tempting to declare every insomniac's 3 a.m. wake up a return to some noble ancestral rhythm. But the real story resists that tidy bow. Historians still debate how universal this pattern truly was, whether it held across every class and climate, or whether it was simply common enough to leave a paper trail this deep. What the evidence actually supports is narrower and somehow more unsettling. This rhythm was real, it was widespread, and modern science could summon it back in a matter of weeks, which means it never left. We just stopped giving it room to appear. Which leaves a strange thought sitting in the dark with you. Somewhere underneath the version of you that panics at 3 a.m., checks a phone, and diagnoses itself as broken, there is an older version, one that used to lie still in that same darkness and simply wait, unbothered, for a second sleep to come. You didn't lose that person through evolution. You lost them the moment a light switch made the dark optional. And for a few strange, quiet minutes in the middle of every night, if you let yourself stay still instead of reaching for a screen, you can still feel them there. The last surviving piece of a rhythm humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting and less than 100 years forgetting completely.